Destiny, a huge and ambitious title coming later this year. It's at the top of many most anticipated games lists, and will be one of the biggest games of the year, no question. But due to its unique nature, gamers new to the title often have difficulty understanding what the game is. This video aims to change that, by covering all of the major details that we know so far. So what is Destiny? Is it an MMO? Is it an FPS? Or is it an RPG? Well, technically, it's known as a shared world shooter. But what does that mean? Let's try to break it down. Destiny is first and foremost an action game. A shooter, akin to what Bungie has produced before, namely Halo. But Bungie aims to revolutionize the genre yet again, by introducing many elements from MMOs and RPGs. Destiny's world is highly social, and the entire game is multiplayer. While we have been assured that you can certainly lone wolf the campaign if that's your thing, the game is designed to be more fun with friends. Every mission is built to accommodate a fire team. Some game modes, like strikes and raids, revolve around co-op and teamwork. There are public events which seamlessly bring you together with other players to take down a boss. And there's also a social hub where you can meet other players, compare gear, find new teammates, and of course, buy, sell, and most likely trade items. There has even been mention of gambling in the game. As for the RPG elements, the game has a large focus on building and improving your Guardian, which is your in-game character. There are multiple classes and races, as well as upgrade trees for your character and every piece of gear in the game. Customization is very important. They want your character to feel unique and personal. There is also a big emphasis on getting loot in Destiny. Much of this will be covered in more depth throughout the video, but hopefully you're starting to get an idea of what Destiny aims to do. They want to take the elements they love from other genres, like everything I was just going over, but then they want to perfectly blend those elements into the first-person shooter model that we know and love from Bungie, with tight responsive controls and combat and storytelling that feels engaging. Before we get into all of the categories covered here, be advised that this is a long video, and you are free to jump between sections using the timestamps in the description below. But I highly recommend watching through the entire thing. If you're interested in Destiny, I guarantee it's worth your time. Destiny is set 700 years from now, if an old marketing leak is to be believed, in our solar system, long after a post-apocalyptic event that nearly drove humanity to extinction. Going back to where it all starts though, some years from now, in modern day, a mysterious and powerful alien orb called the Traveler entered our solar system and settled on Mars. The Traveler began to sow its magic all across our solar system. It tripled human lifespan, granted us incredible powers, allowed us to rapidly increase our technological ability, and expand across our solar system. With its help, we terraformed planets, bringing lush jungles to the sulfuric surface of Venus, life to Mars, and even a thin atmosphere to our moon. It ushered humanity into its golden age. But it did not last. Something hit us, knocked us down, and nearly drove us to extinction. This something was the darkness, the Traveler's ancient enemy which had been tracking it across the galaxy. When it finally caught up to it at Earth, a horrible battle occurred. Very little is known about that time, and it will likely remain that way for a long while. Much of the appeal for Destiny's universe comes from uncovering the mysteries of humanity's past. But what we do know is that the event is called the Collapse. We also know that the few who survived owe their lives to the Traveler. For the Traveler had sacrificed itself to push back the darkness and protect what little of humanity was left. The Traveler then settled low over the Earth, dormant and unmoving, where it still sits. After the collapse, what little remained of humanity banded together and built a city beneath the Traveler. This is the last city. Now, even dormant, the Traveler somehow protects the city with its shields, keeping humanity's enemies at bay and granting powers to the Guardians. Now, if we move forward to where the game begins, humanity has once again achieved some of their old technological abilities. We're able to venture back into space and outside of our walls. However, the solar system is not as it once was. New enemies have claimed our old colonies and are determined to keep us from them. To make everything much worse and more urgent, the darkness is returning. And this time, with the Traveler crippled and silent, we will be defenseless. The Guardians' main long-term goal in Destiny is to wake the Traveler and push back the darkness.
As Guardians, we will stand together, seize our destiny, and become legend.
Back to the setting, as I said, Destiny's world is post-apocalyptic. Ruins of our golden age are everywhere, and even locations and landmarks from modern day can be found. The central art design motto is, "Nature ascendant over lost human civilization." So ruins being reclaimed by nature is a major theme in Destiny's world. But even though Destiny's world is in ruins, and most certainly is post-apocalyptic, it's also very important to Bungie that the world remains hopeful. They don't want it to be a dark, grim place that you don't want to visit. While there certainly will be elements of that in the universe, as a whole, they want it to be a place you want to come back to, bright and inviting. Destiny is also considered mythic sci-fi. In the early stages of pre-production, the game was actually full-on fantasy. However, they couldn't shake off sci-fi completely, so they blended them together, creating mythic sci-fi. We explore the solar system, have advanced technologies, modern weapons, etc. But we also have magical abilities powered by the Traveler, enemies whose soul are sucked from their body when killed, and more. This blend allowed them to really go all out with the art style as well, incorporating robes and capes, and using a lot more cloth than you could in a standard sci-fi universe. It also means they can be much more flexible with the story and gameplay, concentrating on making the game fun and awesome, and not having to worry quite so much about how everything fits into the universe. In Destiny, you play as a Guardian of the Last City. Your Guardian is your in-game character or avatar. It is heavily customizable, and will get better and better the more you play. You will take your Guardian through many different activities in Destiny, and it's important to note that everything is in the same world, with the same Guardian and the same gear that you've earned. Even in competitive multiplayer, it's your character you're playing as, with your equipment. It's all one world. When you start the game, you'll be given the choice of your Guardian's race. Destiny's 3 playable races are Human, Awoken, and Exo. Humans are a bit more standard, described as relatable, tough, and uncomplicated. The Awoken are exotic, beautiful, and mysterious. While their origin is not completely known, we do know that they also survived the collapse, but were forever changed. Personally, I feel that they were once humans, somehow altered during the collapse. And then lastly, the Exo, described as sinister, dominant, and vigorous. The Exo are ancient self-aware machines, created during humanity's golden age. They have since been rebooted, with their memories wiped. The races are purely cosmetic though. It's an emotional choice you make, and should have no real impact on gameplay. Besides your race, you can also choose your gender, customize your face, change your hairstyle, and even add tattoos. Now, the one thing you can choose at the start, which actually does affect gameplay to an extent, is class. You can choose between a Titan, Hunter, or Warlock. The Titan is mostly armored, heavy and upfront. That's your assault type class. The Hunter is more of a rogue, only about half armored, more inclined to use precise or longer ranged weapons, and able to equip those badass capes. Finally, the Warlock is more of a mage, or as they jokingly say, space wizard. Dressed in robes with very little armor, they specialize in harnessing the Traveler's power. Your class will not lock you into weapon types or restrict your playstyle directly. A Warlock can use the same big guns as a Titan, for instance, but it does seem to influence what focuses you can equip, which later affects abilities, supers, and much more, which we'll talk about next. One final thing we know about Guardians before moving on is that you can have multiple Guardians. How many exactly, we don't know, but the game does definitely support multiple character slots. The most important piece of gear you have is your focus. This is an equipable item that allows you to unlock new abilities, perks, and more as you level it up. All of the upgrades are tied to the focus itself and not your character directly, meaning that after you've leveled up one focus and unlocked everything, you can swap out to a new one and start working on that. Different focuses will favor different styles of play. For instance, one might be more healing oriented for cooperative raid work, and another might be better suited for competitive multiplayer. They act almost as a loadout in a way, but go much deeper than that since it ties all of your abilities and upgrades together. So far, we know that your focus affects which abilities you have, which grenade type you have, what super you have, what vertical movement ability you have, and what melee attack you have. As you upgrade your focus, you get access to more abilities and upgrades. Once you complete a focus, you could of course continue to use it, or you can begin upgrading another one and change out your playstyle. This basically means that you can adjust your playstyle almost at will. Since so much is tied to the focuses, which are just items you equip, it makes it really easy to change it out and try new things, without losing everything you've accomplished. Moving past the focuses themselves, we'll take a look at supers. Supers are, as you might expect, your superpower ability that has a large effect. Supers that we have seen in action are the Nova Bomb, somewhat self-explanatory, Radiance, which is the healing and buffing ability, Ghost Gun, great for single target damage, and Fist of Havoc, a powerful ground slam. And then for grenade types, we've seen a bunch in action which we don't have names for, except for this one called the Solar Flare. We've also heard of the Arc Procs, a proximity mine that shocks enemies who pass it. Then there's also the Arc Blade, which is a powerful knife ability, although obviously that's not a grenade. For your vertical movement abilities to help you get around the map, we know of Glide, a hovering ability, Double Jump, and Blink, which quickly dashes or teleports you forward. Then we have our armor, which has a helmet, arm protection, torso armor, and leg equipment. And then we have the 3 weapon slots, primary, special, and heavy, each with color-coded ammo. We also seem to have multiple knives to choose from, and using swords in combat has been essentially confirmed, although it's unknown if swords will actually be a piece of gear you can carry in a weapon slot, or just something you can pick up on the field and use for a short time. There are 4 classes of gear, each color-coded: Basic, which is white, Common, which is green, Superior, which is purple, and finally the Exotics, which are gold. Exotic weapons and armor have very powerful perks, and as such, you may only have one piece of exotic armor and one exotic weapon equipped at a given time. You can have as many as you like in your inventory and swap them out, but only one of each can be actively equipped. That said, all weapons and gear in Destiny have upgrade trees. So even though you can only have one exotic in each category, you can still have some pretty badass, fully upgraded superior gear as the rest. So I wouldn't be worried about not being able to build an amazing Guardian. After all, we have to become legend somehow. The final thing to mention on gear is your Ghost. The Ghost is your AI companion. In its most basic sense, it can act as a flashlight for you. But it's also able to reactivate old technology from the Golden Age, and will be a very important aid on your quest. It's also voiced by Peter Dinklage, who you may know from Game of Thrones. Destiny's approach to multiplayer is a huge part of what makes it so unique. Both competitive and cooperative multiplayer are very important to Destiny, but we'll take a look at cooperative first. The game fully supports cooperative play across all modes, aside from competitive obviously. There's no such thing as single player in Destiny. No matter what you're playing, you can always have friends beside you. Even if you decide to lone wolf it, which you can do, the world around you is still alive, and things like public events will still occur. If you really want to avoid them, you can simply walk around them. But regardless, the world is living and dynamic. Cooperative activities we currently know of course story or campaign, public events, strikes, and raids. There will also be missions and objectives in the world not directly tied into the main campaign, and things to keep making you come back and explore. Everywhere you go, your fire team can accompany you. Fire teams consist of 3 players total, and are able to venture into any story area or strike where higher player counts are not allowed. While exploring the world or accomplishing missions with your fire team, you will come across public events, where other fire teams will seamlessly drop in to help you take down a more powerful foe, creating an awesome co-op battle with some cool loot at the end. Their matchmaking system allows players to drop right in naturally. There's no menus, lobbies, loading, nothing. They simply come around the corner like they've been there the whole time. Strikes are a fun cooperative activity you can tackle with your fire team. They aren't too challenging, we know they have a checkpoint system if you die, and they have some end objective which will reward you with something. They're supposed to be a fun thing to hop into that isn't too serious or time consuming. Raids, on the other hand, are much more challenging endgame style content. They require more strategy, planning, and players to complete. We don't have a ton of info on Destiny's raids at the moment, but we know that they are definitely a much more difficult and intense activity for seasoned players. More details will surely arrive in the future, but for now, cooperative is a powerful part of the Destiny experience. Competitive multiplayer is also a huge part of Destiny. Bungie is well aware of the importance of this game mode, and they are using all of their experience and past knowledge to make it amazing this time around. What do we know about it so far? Well, we know that it has a lot of depth, strategy and tactics, map knowledge, and plain old skill are all very important. All of that said, the game is also simple to pick up and play, described as easy to grasp, but difficult to master. Competitive multiplayer in Destiny occurs in specific maps made just for that purpose. It's separate from the co-op activities, in the sense that you won't be able to turn around and kill someone you're tackling a story mission with. If you want PvP, you're going to have to go into modes specifically for that. These competitive maps have dynamic elements to change lines of sight and alter gameplay. An example is this giant fan on the map Rooftops, located on Mars. The maps have also been designed with a lot of attention put towards ensuring that the vertical movement modes are not overpowered. Another very important element of competitive play is how they achieve map control and keep people moving. In Halo, this was accomplished by dropping power weapons to different areas of the map. But in Destiny, they can't do that since players all enter the game with the weapons and gear they've earned. So what they do instead is they drop ammo. When you spawn, you have no ammo for your heavy weapon. So if you want to use that awesome rocket launcher, you're going to have to grab that ammo before someone else, or kill them and take it, which achieves a similar effect to what they had in Halo, but also accommodates owning your own personal gear. It's also worth noting that at this current point in time, you must kill enemies to unlock supers in competitive. It sounds like an energy meter type thing. As you kill enemies, it fills up, and then you can finally use that awesome power ability. Now I'm sure some people are wondering how competitive fits into Destiny's story. Well, that's explained by factions. The 5 factions are New Monarchy, Dead Orbit, Seven Seraphs, Future War Cult, and Osiris. They're fighting for control, and I'm sure they have various motives of their own that remain to be seen. But once you join a faction, they are essentially hiring you to fight members of the opposing factions. Now, how that works when you're in one faction and you have a friend in another, we don't know, but Bungie has stated that they won't be putting barriers in the way of friends playing together, so I'm sure it'll work out somehow. Also, the factions do have some faction-specific weapons and gear, and we've seen the ability to decorate your own gear and even spaceship with faction logos. I'm sure a lot more on factions will be revealed in the future. While we still don't know a ton about competitive multiplayer at this point, and we have very little footage, from everything we've heard, it sounds like an absolute blast to play. And I have 100% confidence in Bungie's ability to create an amazing competitive experience. Destiny has 4 enemy races, plus the darkness I talked about earlier, which we could speculate is considered the 5th enemy race, in this old concept art here. But that remains to be seen. The 4 races are the Fallen, Vex, Hive, and Cabal. Within each race are multiple classes. They all have their history, some of which we know, some we don't, and they all seem to share a hatred of humanity. First up, the Fallen. They seem to be considered Destiny's main enemy combatant. They were once a proud race, made of noble houses, but something happened, and they have since been scattered across the solar wind, forced to scavenge and pirate. They are ruthless, and believe that every planet we ever touched belongs to them. We currently know of 3 fallen classes: the lowly dregs, the more dangerous vandals, and the fearsome captains. We've also seen a boss fallen known as Rixus the Archon Slayer, and the Fallen have combat assist drones called Shanks. The next race is the Vex. They are time-traveling machines, coming into our solar system via warp gates. They seem to have made Venus their home, where they ceaselessly defend an odd tower called the Citadel. Something to note about the Vex: headshots do very little to them. Instead, you want to target their abdomen power cores, which results in an explosion of glowing white liquid. The Vex have 5 classes we know of, 4 of which we've seen footage of. First, the common goblins we see all the time, then the broad-shouldered minotaurs. After that are hobgoblins, the more advanced cousin of goblins, distinguished by their tails. Then we have hydras, a flying Vex unit. And finally, harpies, which we have no footage of, but we know that they fly rapidly in and out of a fight, revealing a mass of glowing filaments before firing. It's also worth noting that the Vex are at odds with the Cabal, the next race we'll be looking at, and it won't be uncommon to see them locked in combat. The Cabal are a powerful militaristic empire. They seem to be the most organized and regimented race, and taking over planets sounds like everyday work for them. Everything about them is massive, and they also have a gritty industrial feel. There are 4 Cabal classes: the basic Centurions, then Legionnaires, which are outfitted with jump packs to move around the battlefield, and then the giant Gladiators, carrying that massive Gatling gun, and finally the Scions, a much smaller, more unique Cabal unit that uses their mind to control ships, or even confront enemies in battle. The final race is the Hive. Referred to as space zombies, they do have a very undead feel. They seem to be some ancient race that's managed to keep themselves alive for a millennia with dark magic, as they float around the galaxy in their sarcophagus ships, or lay brooding in the center of the moon. The Hive classes begin with the lowly Thrall, a light unit that rushes you in numbers. Then Troopers, a somewhat stronger foe. After that, we have the cleaver-wielding Knights. And then the Wizards, who have magical abilities powered by the darkness, much like we do from the Traveler. The final Hive class is the Ogre, a giant beast that's able to shoot an energy beam from its forehead. In Destiny, exploration is a key element, returning to the worlds we once claimed during the Golden Age and taking back what's ours. Because of this, much of the solar system is explorable. Something to throw in here is that Destiny has a dynamic day-night cycle that exists on all the planets. But it's also altered, so a single day on Venus isn't a third of a year, or anything else like that. Getting into it though, starting with the obvious one, Earth, which has the city along with the tower and Old Russia, all of which we've seen in-game. But it also has many locations we've seen in concept art, such as the swamps of Old Chicago, the Mumbai Push, and the European Dead Zone. We have yet to find out how much of this will be available to play at launch, but I'm sure it'll be more than just Old Russia. Next is Earth's moon. We know of the Hellmouth, which has a Hive army brooding within. We've also seen the Accelerator and various moon bases. Expect to find a lot of Hive here, and even some Fallen from what we've seen. After that is Mars, which has many locations we know of, including the Buried City, once a shining metropolis, the Exclusion Zone, the Dead Forests, Charlemagne's Vault, and the Black Garden, a very special place we know nothing about. You should certainly expect to see a lot of Cabal on Mars, and even Vex from what we've heard. Then we have Venus, home to the Shattered Coast and the Vex Citadel. There's also the remains of an old research settlement from the Golden Age. Venus is known for its lush tropical jungles, its sulfuric yellow sky, and the Vex that inhabit it. We may have also seen the Fallen there at one point. That's the end of the outright confirmed locations in Destiny, but there are more. Derelict ships floating in the rings of Saturn have been mentioned many times, and we have some in-game glimpses as well. Mercury was shown in concept form at an E3 presentation video, and I believe this here has to be in-game footage of that. Finally, we have Europa, one of Jupiter's icy moons. It's been mentioned once or twice. We've seen a couple pieces of concept art, and it was also sort of shown in that E3 video. Again, it remains to be seen if all of that will be available at launch, but I believe at least some of it ought to be. The tower is Destiny's social hub, and thus is a very important part of the universe. It's the headquarters or home of the Guardians. It overlooks the city we protect. It has large open plazas where players can meet, hangars to store our ship, and vendors to buy items and ammo, as well as sell your loot. There also seems to be an element of refitting and repairing at the tower, indicating that our ships and vehicles, or perhaps even gear, will need maintenance. The tower is your haven to return to after missions. Refit, rearm, repair, meet new friends, compare yourself with other Guardians, and head out on your next adventure. The city we know less about, unfortunately. There has been mention of gun markets, compared to bazaars in other countries, and this old concept art might give a vague idea of the feel they're going for. Perhaps even more interesting though, we were once told that there will be non-combat activities in the city. Before we move on from social areas, it's worth noting that the game switches to third-person view when in these non-combat zones, which allows for us to see and show off all the cool gear we've earned. We can also remove our helmets in these areas. Going on to the brief bit on the economy, we know that Destiny has an in-game currency called Glimmer. We've seen it dropped by enemies, and it must also be rewarded for completing missions and selling loot. It's a rare energy-based substance left over from the Golden Age, and it looks like blue shimmering crystals. This would of course be used to pay for services or purchasing items in the tower and city, as well as for the gambling I mentioned earlier. Bungie also hired an economy designer, which shows their interest in that element. Getting close to the end, there's a few vehicles we know of. First off, our personal spaceship, which can be upgraded and customized, and I believe we can also buy new ones. Unfortunately, there is heavy indication that we cannot manually pilot our ships. It's rather a means of getting us around the solar system. Upgrading them will allow you to reach further away destinations, and customizations you make will be viewable in cutscenes. Next is the Sparrow, a little speeder bike type thing that we can call in to traverse the world more quickly. This is also a personal vehicle stored in your ship by the sound of it, and is customizable. Whether we can purchase different types of ground vehicles remains to be seen, but I wouldn't rule it out. After that, we have the Fallen Pike, which is a much larger speeder bike type vehicle. We know that they can be stolen from the Fallen and used by players at will. They are equipped with front cannons and may potentially be able to carry a passenger. Then there's the Devil Walker, a Fallen tank. Judging by the look of it, I would guess this is not drivable by players. It is a formidable enemy though, with many different weapons and the ability to dispatch Fallen shanks. Finally, there's the giant Cabal tank. Also highly unlikely that this would be drivable. I'm sure it's fun to board and destroy though. The matchmaking system has been completely revamped with Destiny to allow the seamless drop-in, drop-out co-op and lobby-free nature of the game. Everything happens behind the scenes. You never see a menu or loading screen when players drop in. It's naturally occurring. There are dedicated servers to power the matchmaking system, but when it comes to actually hosting co-op games, that will be done on the player's side, much like in Halo and many other games. Bungie has said that they've put a lot of work into the networking system, and the game will be selecting the best players to host, as well as putting people together who are close to each other geographically. Whether the competitive matches will be fully hosted by dedicated servers or not remains to be seen. We're getting to the end now, but don't click off yet. There's still a handful of little things that are very interesting, so stick through to the end. Destiny does not have a main menu. Since everything happens in the same living world, there's no need for a menu to go into separate game modes. That will be achieved in-game, by simply traveling to that place in your ship or something along those lines. We've been shown Destiny's controller layout, at least one of them, I'm guessing there are more. And there's a few notable buttons here. First, switching weapons with triangle or Y. Since Destiny has 3 weapon slots, you switch from primary to special by tapping, and you hold it down to get to your heavy. And then L1, or LB on Xbox, throws your grenade type, and R1, or RB, is for melee. Now if you hold those two down, you wind up for your super. And then if you hit crouch when sprinting, you'll do a slide. Then if you hit jump while already in the air, you'll activate your vertical movement ability. Next, you may notice the aim down sights on the left trigger, new to Bungie since Halo. All weapons do support ADS in Destiny. Finally, the emotes on the D-pad. In-game voice chat in Destiny is restricted to members of your fire team only, so emotes are a way to communicate to other players without voice. And then things like dancing are also just plain fun. Currently, Destiny has an armor and health system. As you get low on armor, damage will bleed into your health. We've heard it mentioned once that max team size with voice chat to all players is 6 people, although details are non-existent. We know Bungie absolutely does not want 1,000-hour grinds or an insane level of commitment overall. Whether you play a bunch or just here and there, it'll be a fun experience regardless. Player guilds have yet to be officially confirmed, but it seems highly likely that they will exist. We saw them shown in the first Vidoc, and guild or clan activity has been positively mentioned since then. They do have a long-term partnership with PlayStation for Destiny. We know that the Destiny beta will come slightly sooner to the PlayStation players, and we know that there's a lot of PlayStation-related cross-marketing. That's all that is confirmed, but other interviews have essentially laid out that it is very much like the deal Call of Duty has with Xbox, which means 30-day early DLC for PlayStation players. While not officially confirmed, I do believe this will be a thing. Destiny has been in full development by the entire Bungie team since Halo Reach shipped in 2010, and has been in early pre-production since 2007. So they've put a ton of time into this game, building everything from the ground up to create something new and exciting. There was even a Destiny Easter egg in ODST, showing that they were committed back then. Bungie has a 10-year agreement with Activision for Destiny. The original documents we've seen have them contracted to make 4 Destiny titles, one every 2 years, with large expansions codenamed Comet coming every other year in between launches. Although that document is not 100% accurate anymore, as it is quite old and we know some things have changed. Now, even though they're signed with Activision, Destiny is a Bungie-owned IP. Once that 10-year term is up, Bungie is free to go if they like, taking Destiny with them, as opposed to Halo, which was Microsoft-owned. It's also worth noting that interviews with Activision's CEO indicate that it is a true partnership. Things are jointly decided together, and Activision doesn't call all the shots themselves. Another thing is that Activision took a huge leap of faith with Bungie, seeing as this has been one of their biggest investments ever, and is somewhat of a risky title. I honestly feel Activision deserves a little credit for what they've done here, especially since they've allowed Bungie to own the franchise. Finally, Destiny is an always online game. It requires an internet connection to play. This is not done in a DRM sense though. It is always online because the entire world is connected, dynamic, multiplayer, and constantly updated. The good news here though, something Bungie never ceases to reaffirm, Destiny will not charge any monthly subscription. Although it does seem that microtransactions are quite likely, but they've confirmed that they would never make the game pay to win. And then of course, this one everyone should already know, we have the release date. Destiny releases on the 9th of September this year, with an extensive beta coming sometime this summer. To gain access, simply pre-order a copy at a participating retailer. Now that brings us to the end of all of the major details that we know so far about Destiny. If you enjoyed, please do hit the like button below. An absolute ton of work went into this video, and a like would really help me out a lot. If you guys could get this past 5,000 likes, that'd be amazing. I know it is a lot, but I wouldn't ask if I didn't honestly feel it deserved it. Also, I've never asked for this before, but please consider sharing the video, and keep it in mind if you want to show Destiny to a friend who doesn't really understand it, or even for anyone who just wants to learn more about the game. That's the whole point of this video. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for all of the latest and most in-depth Destiny coverage up until launch and beyond. Before we go, if you'd like more news in video form, please check out my good friends covering Halo, Titanfall, and Star Wars Battlefront, all linked in the description below. Feel free to ask any questions or just leave your thoughts in the comments below. I always do my best to read and answer everyone I can. Thank you so very much for watching, especially if you've made it this far, then you've already become legend. As always, I greatly appreciate the support, and I'll see you in the next update.